Yes, thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining CJK Education and Training. Apologies. On workshop online. I am Sessin Kim from Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat, TCS. I'm very honored to serve as the Master of Ceremony for this event. So this workshop's topic is Tools and Technologies for Earthquake Risk Management, Sharing Experience from Northeast Asia, co-hosted by TCS and United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, Office for Northeast Asia and Global Education and Training Institute, hereafter UNDRR. TCS would like to thank UNDRR for their contributions to preparing this event with us. Please note that this session will be recorded, and by participating, you consent for TCS and UNDRR to collect and use participants' information for communication purposes. Interpretation is available in 5 languages, as Daria mentioned: Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Mongolian, and English. Please make sure to click on the globe button to select the right language channel that you want. Also, please post your questions in the Q&A box. Without further ado, let us begin with our workshop with some opening remarks from TCS and from the CJK government. First, I would like to invite Mr. Bomhun Beck, Deputy Secretary General of TCS, for opening remark. Mr. Beck, please.
Thank you, Sesong. Distinguished guests, experts, and scholars. Good afternoon. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to CJK Education and Training Institute online workshop. China, Japan, Korea have a long history of geographical proximity and political, economic, social, cultural exchanges. While there have been some difficulties for us in recent years, these difficulties have been relatively short-lived compared to the total period of peace and cooperation among Korea, Japan, and China. It is my sincere hope that the collective experiences of the CJK countries will enable us to work together effectively to deal with the disaster risks, such as earthquake and other natural disasters. Today's workshop provides a valuable opportunity to strengthen our cooperation and enhance our disaster response capabilities. This workshop is part of our ongoing trilateral cooperation on disaster management and disaster risk reduction. It is based on the outcomes of previous meetings, including trilateral ministerial meeting on disaster management and the trilateral working level consultation meeting on disaster management. Through these joint activities, the TCS countries, TCS have been supporting CJK to share experience for capacity development on disaster risk reduction with each other. Main topic for today's workshop is for experts in field to share experiences of earthquake risk management in China, Japan, Korea, and Mongolia. As we all know, Northeast Asia has suffered quite often, especially Japan, from open earthquakes and other disasters. Therefore, it is essential that we strongly work together to manage these risks and reduce their bad effect on our communities. This workshop provides an opportunity for us to share our experience and examples of effective practices, including through the application of technology, infrastructure resilience measures, and sustainable and risk-informed recovery, and build back better approaches. By working together, we can reduce the impact of natural disasters on our communities and build a safe and more resilient future. Through the sharing of experiences and effective practices, such as the application of technology and infrastructure resilience measures, we will be able to reach a really safe environment. This workshop serves as a valuable platform for us to continue our cooperation on disaster risk reduction, further promoting experts and technology exchanges among CJK and other countries. We hope this opportunity will be a good kick-off networking of all disaster experts of CJK and other countries. Thank you.
DSG Beck, thank you for your remark. Next, we would like to invite government officials from CJK to deliver opening remarks. Firstly, please welcome Mr. Guangyuan Wang from Chinese Ministry of Emergency Management, who is Deputy Director of Bilateral Division of Department of International Cooperation and Rescue. Mr. Wang, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. Dear all participants, it is a great honor for me to make an opening statement on behalf of the Ministry of Emergency Management of China at the CJK Education and Training Institute online workshop, Tools and Technologies for Earthquake Risk Management, Sharing Experience from Northeast Asia. Northeast Asia is one of the most disaster-prone regions in the world. To understand where we stand in preventing disaster risks, not long ago, the UN General Assembly mandated the midterm review of the implementation of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, a key international agreement adopted in 2015 by 187 countries to reduce disaster losses by the year of 2030. The report of the midterm review finds that there has been an 80% increase in the number of people affected by disasters since 2015. While the number of people affected was rising, disasters were becoming more complex and more expensive too, with an average above $520 billion per year between 2015 and 2021, which is estimated to be significantly undervalued. At the same time, there has been no commensurate increase in funding for disaster risk reduction. Therefore, no country can face disaster risks alone. It is of paramount importance to strengthen international cooperation in disaster risk reduction. The Ministry of Emergency Management was established in 2018 to deepen the reform of the institutions. The ministry undertakes important responsibilities of preventing and diffusing major safety risks, responding to all kinds of disasters and accidents in a timely manner, and shoulders the significant mission of protecting people's life and property and maintaining social stability, and manages the National Fire and Rescue Administration, the National Mine Safety Administration, and the China Earthquake Administration. Over the years, we have made tremendous efforts to prevent and diffuse risks and maintain the overall stability in disaster risk reduction nationwide. From 2018 to 2022, the number of fatalities and missing persons from natural disasters declined by 50.3% from the previous 5 years. China, Japan, and Korea have maintained sound cooperation in disaster risk reduction under the guidance of Trilateral Ministerial Meeting on Disaster Management. This workshop is a living embodiment of experience and knowledge sharing on disaster management. Our ministry is developing the Belt and Road International Cooperation Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction and Emergency Management, which is called BRIDRAM, as a main platform for international cooperation in disaster risk reduction of China. To promote high-quality development of BRIDRAM, the Ministry of Emergency Management of China will host the 2023 Belt and Road Ministerial Forum for International Cooperation in Disaster Risk Reduction and Emergency Management, the 2023 BRIDRAM Forum, in November this year, where a spectrum of cooperation initiatives will be announced. We hope that all partners can join BRIDRAM, this important mechanism, and work together to contribute to the capacity building of all countries in disaster risk reduction. I wish the workshop a great success. Thank you. Thank you all.
Mr. Wong, thank you for your remark. Next, please welcome Mr. Takeo Murakami from Cabinet Office of Japan, who is Director of International Cooperation Division, Disaster Management Bureau. Mr. Murakami, the floor is yours. Oh, yes, it'll be the Deputy Director, Ms. Makiko Ohashi. Yes, she will be doing the remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As introduced, unfortunately, Mr. Murakami is not available for other urgent engagements, so I will deliver the speech on behalf of him. Distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to join this online workshop today and deliver the opening remarks on behalf of the Japanese government. The trilateral ministerial meeting on disaster management by the governments of Japan, China, and Korea launched in 2009 in Kobe, Japan. Since then, Japan hosted the meeting for 3 times, including the most recent 7th meeting that was held in July 2022 in a virtual format. In the joint statement of the ministerial meeting, the importance and significance of trilateral cooperation on disaster management was recognized, noting the geographical proximity of the 3 countries and more frequent and catastrophic natural disasters that we commonly face. It was also recognized in the joint statement that the 3 countries will give full play to the existing international and regional education and training institutions located in the 3 countries, including the Asian Disaster Reduction Center for ADRC, the National Disaster Reduction Center of China, or NDRCC, and the Global Education and Training Institute, or GETI. In this connection, I welcome today's workshop, organized jointly by those 3 institutions with the support from the TCS as an important element of implementation for the joint statement. The Asian Disaster Reduction Center, ADRC, which represents the institutes residing in Japan, was established in 1998 with the mission of enhancing the disaster resilience of its member countries, building safe communities, and creating a society where sustainable development is attainable. The ADRC now has the membership of 31 countries all across the Asia and the Pacific region, including Japan, China, and Korea. It is located in Kobe, Japan, in response to the tragic earthquake that struck Kobe and surrounding areas in 1995, and now serves as the hub of international and regional cooperation on disaster risk reduction. The subject of workshop today is tools and technologies for earthquake risk management. As we witnessed in the 1995 earthquake in Kobe and 2011 earthquake in Tohoku region of Japan, is one of the most earthquake-prone countries in the world, and Japanese policies on disaster risk reduction have been developed as we learn from the past earthquake disasters. More importantly, this year marks the 100th anniversary of the Great Kanto earthquake, which hit the Tokyo metropolitan area and caused catastrophic impacts to the country. Japan has progressed its earthquake countermeasures since then, including the adoption of seismic-resistant building standards as the first of its kind in the world. The continuous policy progress and implementation over the 100 years have made the Japanese society quite resilient to earthquake disasters. It is well recognized that in the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011, majority of housing damages are caused by the tsunami, while the number of buildings collapsed by the earthquake tremor was very limited after years of efforts in seismic retrofitting and enforcement of new building codes. It was also reported in the Great East Japan earthquake that many school children in the tsunami-affected areas in Iwate Prefecture were able to evacuate safely from the coastline, thanks to the evacuation drills and learning from the past lessons. In the workshop today, Mr. Ikeda Makoto, senior researcher at the ADRC, will share Japan's experience on earthquake risk reduction along with other speakers from China and Korea. I sincerely wish that today's workshop will be a precious opportunity for increasing the understanding of existing tools, technologies, and effective practices for risk reduction among the countries prone to earthquakes. I also wish that through this workshop, mutual collaboration among the 3 institutes and the 3 countries will be further promoted for sharing knowledge and practices on disaster risk reduction measures. I conclude my remarks by wishing the successful organization of the workshop and extending my appreciation to all the speakers and the organizers, including the Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat, which provided logistic and substantive support for the preparation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Ohashi. Thank you for your speech. Now moving on, please welcome Mr. Sung-woo Woo from Korean Ministry of Interior and Safety, the Director of Earthquake Disaster Policy Division. Mr. Woo, please.
Can I start? Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, this is Sung David Woo, who is working at Earthquake Disaster Policy Division of Ministry of Interior and Safety as a Director. I'm really honored to be with all
ご
of
紹介いた
you.
だきました私は、国立災害防止対策の主任でございます。サンウと申します。今日は
devastating loss of life and extensive damage to infrastructure. However, through proactive risk management strategies and the effective utilization of tools and technologies, we can minimize the impact of these natural disasters. In Northeast Asia, a region prone to seismic activity, we have witnessed remarkable advancements in earthquake risk management. Today, we have the opportunity to exchange valuable insights and learn from one another's experiences. By fostering collaboration and knowledge sharing, we can collectively work towards building more resilient communities. During this event, we'll delve into the diverse array of tools and technologies that have been instrumental in earthquake risk management, from early warning system and seismic monitoring networks to innovative structural engineering practice and community preparedness initiatives. We will explore how these resources can help mitigate the risk associated with earthquake. I encourage all participants to actively engage in discussions, ask questions, and share your valuable experiences together. Let us leverage this platform to build stronger networks, foster collaboration, and contribute to the collective resilience of our communities. Thank you once again for joining us today. May this event serve as a catalyst for innovation and inspire us to strive for safer and more prepared futures. Thank you.
Mr. Wu, thank you for the speech. Now this concludes our opening session. Now, before inviting our speakers, I would like to briefly mention why we are holding this workshop and introduce you our speakers today. This workshop is based on the 7th Joint Statement on Disaster Management Cooperation conducted by China, Japan, and Republic of Korea on 14th of July 2022. 3 countries agreed to promote and expand capacity of disaster management and risk reduction, specifically assigned 3 institutes: National Disaster Reduction Center of China, Asian Disaster Reduction Center, and UNDRR Office for Northeast Asia and Global Education and Training Institute to support experience sharing on disaster risk reduction among the 3 countries and provide training opportunities for developing countries. As this year we saw the devastating earthquake in Turkey and Syria in February, the topic of tools and technologies for earthquake risk management appears very timely. Building on the advanced experience in earthquake risk reduction in Northeast Asian countries, The workshop aims to share the expertise and examples of effective practices from China, Japan, Korea, and provide the opportunity for an exchange with other countries facing similar challenges, including Mongolia. Today, we are pleased to invite 7 experts from the field of disaster management in 4 countries to present their best practices and discuss about earthquake risk management. First, we will hear from China, Japan, and Republic of Korea about their experiences and best practices, which include technologies and capacity development tools for earthquake risk reduction in these 3 countries. These presentations will be followed by a brief intervention from Mongolia and an open discussion with other countries regarding capacity development needs in the Asia-Pacific region and beyond. After that, the 3 education and training institutes will present some of the available capacity development tools for earthquake risk reduction in Northeast Asia and globally. I would again like to remind our members of the audience that this workshop is interpreted in 5 languages, so please click the globe button to select the right language channel that you want. Each session will include a short Q&A, but depending on the time, the Q&A may be held until the last minute. You can post your questions in the Q&A box in advance. Let us begin sharing experiences from China. Our first speaker, Dr. Tao Wang, studied in Kyoto University, Japan, for his doctoral degree in engineering and currently is a Deputy Director General and researcher of Institute of Engineering Mechanics, China Earthquake Administration. His topic is scenario-based simulation of urban earthquake disaster in China. Dr. Wang, the floor is yours. You have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and my dear distinguished guests. I'm really honored to attend this workshop and also very glad to share my past research to all of you. And today I will present some progress in the city-level simulation on earthquake disasters. The title is Virtual Digital City and Urban Seismic Resilience. And it's actually a joint work from me and also my colleague, Professor Xu Chuanlin. And this is the outline. First is the background. Then I will introduce the key techniques of digital city and earthquake scenario. Next is the verification of disaster simulation of urban area and the typical applications. Finally is the summary. So on February 6, 2023, 2 strong earthquakes hit the south area of Turkey and caused massive casualties and significant economic losses. President Xi considered this very much on this earthquake disaster and also cared a lot on the earthquake situation of China. And when and where will the next strong earthquake occur? And what would happen if the earthquake hit the Chinese cities? These are serious questions we have to face in the near future. In the past 30 years, China has experienced the rapid development of urbanization. The scale of the city was expanded significantly, and the number of cities with more than 5 million populations is about 24% of the world. In these cities, concentrated huge populations, infrastructures, and wealth. So these rapidly developed cities were distributed in the east and south part of China and formed several huge metropolitan areas. Historically speaking, many earthquakes with magnitude larger than 6 occurred in some of these areas. For example, in the past 300 years, there was one M7 earthquake hit Beijing neighboring area for every 44 years. However, these cities haven't experienced any major earthquakes in the past 40 years. That's lack of related knowledge of emergency response and rescue. The strong earthquakes are featured with large strong motion intensity, wide spatial distribution, strong dynamic effect, and strong randomness. Once it occurred on the megacities with dense population, intensive and diverse infrastructures with different ages and different seismic resistance capabilities, it would result in massive casualties, extensive damages of engineering structures, and also the engineering systems as well. And finally, the cities would lose its functionality. So we have limited knowledge in the damage mechanism and disaster development on the city level, particularly for the interdependent engineering systems and society activities. The traditional research method cannot be used for the city engineering system. New technology is needed to study city earthquake engineering targeted at engineering systems. So the digital twin city is the reflection of the real physical cities in the digital world. It provides sufficient data and could be combined with a numerical simulation technique to reproduce the complete disaster development of complex city systems. If combined with the novel sensing and transmission techniques, the digital twin turns to be the digital physical hybrid twin. The numerical model could be calibrated by the measured signals and from the physical engineering structures, and thus advancing the simulation accuracy. So based on the hybrid twin models, we could construct many earthquake scenarios. To do this, we have to consider the entire wave propagation path from the fault to each individual structure. Major contents including the seismic fault modeling, the wave propagation field analysis, nonlinear engineering set effects analysis, and the nonlinear response analysis of engineering structures, and also the engineering disasters and also the consequences. With this analysis result, we can further provide different earthquake scenarios and consequences, or evaluate the different earthquake prevention strategies and effects, and finally, provide optimized earthquake prevention strategies and suggestions. And in this process, the uncertainty and also the nonlinearity in the city engineering system and also the earthquake disaster shall be well considered in the entire simulation system. And also, all of this content configures the earthquake scenario construction. So here are several challenges. One is the data to build the digital city and the earthquake scenario are massive, and including the building design and maintenance data, the traffic facilities and the road networks, the site and fault information, and the distribution of other lifeline engineering. They often belong to different departments and difficult to collect and achieve the completeness of the database. To solve this difficulty, we built a benchmark city based on the small city in the south of China, which includes 337 residential units and about 0.7 million population. And we provide the building information, including the structure type, the height, the design drawings, and the distribution of buildings. And also, we include the transportation system, and they are well defined, including the length, the traveling speed, and the distribution as well. And
Mr.
other
Wang.
lifeline engineering system. Yes.
Mr. Wang, sorry. Could you please slow down a little bit for the interpreters as well?
Okay. So for the other lifeline engineering system, including the water distribution network and also the power distribution networks, and the drainage distribution networks and the gas distribution networks are also provided with fruitful information for the users to modeling. We also provide emergency rescue related buildings, including hospitals, emergency shelters, schools, and so on. Very detailed information, including the building type, the story number, patient bed, medical staffs, and the clinical departments and medical laboratories were collected as well. This benchmark city is a GIS-based test bed. The data could be used to calibrate different assessment methods, and the result could also be exhibited online. The second difficulty is to analyze the seismic reliability of infrastructure networks. These networks were often featured with physical meanings, such as the water supply network. The hydraulic head actually determines the serviceability. To this end, we developed a seismic resilience assessment framework, which combines the hydraulic analysis and the network connectivity analysis. We also built the damage simulation method in the hydraulic analysis based on the connectivity failure. Using this method, we could examine the network damage distribution, the affected area, the serviceability, and also the recovery strategy. Similarly, we conducted the resilience assessment of urban telecommunication system. Using the ratio between the available base station and the total base station, the functionality can be defined. Then the functionality on the different intensities can be calculated. The distribution of damaged base stations can be used to guide the emergency recovery of urban telecommunication systems. The third one is the efficient analysis platform for city engineering structures. We use C++ and Fortran to develop a software called U-Simulator. It contains 4 modules, including the automatic modeling, response computing, results analysis, and 3D visualization. Recently, the fire spread analysis was also developed. 2 basic modules are the modeling and also the nonlinear time history analysis. Tens of millions of buildings and engineering structures exist in the megacities. It is not possible to build one by one. Instead, we use remote sensing or model mapping technology to identify the building height or number of stories. Then, according to the structure type and the construction time, we could develop a story model with 3-dimensional springs to simulate the story behavior. In this model, the mass was calculated from floor area, which was identified from the GIS data. During the simulation, the wave field was generated according to the zonation map of ground motions of China. The model was calibrated through monitoring data from instrumented physically installed on typical buildings. By this way, the massive story model could be calibrated and would well represent the true behavior of the real building. So the city simulator was first calibrated by the Christchurch earthquake. We built the model of CBD area of Christchurch and input the recorded ground motion for the disaster simulation. The left picture is the simulated result and compared with the right picture from satellite remote sensing. Only demolished or undemolished buildings could be identified from the remote sensing corresponding to the collapse state and the slight moderate state, respectively. The simulation generally agrees with the remote sensing. It's underestimated the damage because the liquefaction was not considered in the numerical simulation. Then the simulator was also used to reproduce 2014 Ludian earthquake China. It is compared with the field survey. Over 60% of buildings presented correct damage states at the first round simulation. Later, it was used to simulate 2021 Yangbi earthquake and compared with the field survey. The 3 damage states agree well with the field survey. The final case is the application to 2022 Ludian earthquake. Both remote sensing and simulation get the same global damage index, 0.63, thus demonstrating the simulation accuracy. It is also possible to be applied for the fire spread simulation. The spread area from the simulation is similar as that observed during Kobe earthquake. So for the typical application, we constructed several scenarios for Chongli district, where the Winter Olympic Game was located. At different levels of input, the building damages changed significantly. Similarly, the earthquake scenario was constructed for the DBE and MCE earthquake for Tangshan earthquake. These results are helpful for the city managers to locate the weak area of the earthquake protection. It is also possible to analyze the demand of emergency shelters for different communities. It can also be used for past planning during the emergency rescue. In this simulation, we considered the building collapse and also the debris from the building could block the transportation, and we also consider this effect. And the transportation simulation considering the connectivity. And finally, we could give the functionality loss of the road network. So here's my summary. First, the digital physical hybrid twin technology is one of the important approaches to address the challenges of disaster management in large cities. Second, the proposed digital twin and disaster scenario construction technology exhibit advanced features in model generation, computational efficiency, and accuracy. Third, the technology can be utilized in urban disaster prevention planning, urban renewal, disaster emergency management, and so on. However, further research is still needed on the completeness of urban data and also the interdependency among engineering systems. That's all. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Wang, for your insightful presentation, and thank you for keeping it in time. If the audiences have any questions, you can always upload it on the Q&A session, and also speakers are free to go on and give answers to those questions. And our next speaker is, I would like to invite Dr. Wei Wu, who studied in Peking University, majoring in cartography and geographical information system. Dr. Dr. Wu,
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you. Sorry, I haven't finished your explaining your introductions. Sorry. So Dr. Wu is currently a director of the Disaster Assessment Department in National Disaster Reduction Center of China. So Dr. Wu, please go ahead. You have 15 minutes. And as the slides will be shared by, I believe, you and the RR, please say next when you want the slide to be moved on to the next slide. Thank you. You may go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to speak in Chinese.
Okay, I will be addressing in Chinese.
For your invitation to give me the chance to give the presentation about losses assessment and practice of earthquake in China. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, thank you.
Here I'm going to present in three parts. First of all, I'm going to go through the current disaster assessment. Second, I will be going through briefly some relevant disaster assessment progress and our application scenarios. And lastly, I'm going to walk you through some of our subsequent actions to be taken and our insights and progress and developments. As we understand, China is located in the Pacific Rim, where the plates intersect, where the Filipino and Pacific plates intersect. It's a very vibrant area of earthquakes on mainland China. And there are over 200 volcano and earthquake belts. On the part of earthquakes, since 1900, most of our earthquakes beyond the level 7 is in this belt, and most of those earthquakes took place in Xinjiang and North China and Sichuan. And on the perspective of population, this chart represents the activities of earthquakes in China. And the Chinese population, most of the population is concentrated on the east and less on the west. And there is a line here from Changyangtze River to Yunnan province that divides the population density. And southeast, and 96% of the population is habitated on the southeast. and most of the earthquakes take place in less populated areas. On the east, it's a large populated areas. So the earthquake, the next one. This chart shows the earthquakes and volcano distributions in China. In China, this is the characteristic of China earthquakes, and intensity is high, and they are intense. Actually, according to statistics, around since the last century, and 25 of the earthquakes above level 8 took place in China. One is 2001 in Yunnan. The other one is the famous one in Wenchuan that took place in 2008, where casualty was tens of thousands of people lost their lives, and their distribution is wide. And most of the earthquakes are distributed, and those above level 6 are distributed in more than 30 provinces, and level 8 and above, and they're just largely populated, distributed across China. So basically, the secondary these disasters are incalculable. It is a non-linear growth present in China. So since 2016 in July, President Xi Jinping was in the visit in Tangshan, Hebei. He proposed 2 insistence and 3 changes, insisting on prevention and prevention in combination with fighting. And also we should combine disaster prevention and also disaster recovery, and we should move from addressing one single type to multi-type of disasters. Since then, China has done a lot, put a lot of efforts in achievements in disaster prevention and recovery, which has provided very important guidance for our disaster recovery work. Next slide, please. On disaster assessment, the Chinese government proposed many relevant guidelines. And that last page, please. China has released relevant legislation and policies to address different kinds of emergencies, like these schemes and plans and comprehensive disaster prevention planning documents, which specify how to carry out disaster assessment. On these on this law, there is a requirement that any government above the county level should carry out assessment post-disaster, and they should assess the scope of impact of such disasters and the intensity, and to organize assessment of emergencies. On this natural disaster rescue regulations, they also said that government beyond the county level should release disaster assessment information. All of these have provided guidance for our disaster recovery work. Next is to briefly walk you through our loss assessment and the work underway at the stage. Earthquakes, we are carrying out these 3 types of assessments. First is the loss assessment, which takes place at the beginning of an earthquake, which means that we will carry out assessment of the scope of impact of the earthquake at the early stage, and we have relevant systems in place which take into account of the center of the earthquake and the relevant information in order to generate an intensity graphic. And this will inform us of the people inside the graphic, and also the collapse of buildings and loss of lives, how much that took place. Next slide, please. Here we're going to walk you through the major content that we about our assessment. First is about the rural areas close to the center of the earthquake, and also the important infrastructure and the outbreak of the earthquakes, and also shelters, size and numbers of shelters. And all of these are providing very important information for our post-disaster recovery and rescue. On the part of the initial stage assessment of the earthquakes, second part is we need to have comprehensive assessment of earthquakes. This is in accordance of our relevant regulations on disaster rescue recovery. And these assessments are in accordance with our major earthquake disaster requirements. First is the disaster scope assessment. What is the scope of the impact of earthquake? And where are the severe parts and which are the less severe parts? And second is the physical quantity assessment, which assess the loss of property, physical properties.
Second part is to evaluate
and also the
damage
economic
of
loss.
the earthquake. The next page.
On the part of the scope of, we need to assess the assessment unit. For example, in the Wenchuan earthquake, we perform assessments again by the county. We assess more than 10 counties, and we assess more than 100 administrative regions affected by the earthquake. So our units are based on counties. The methodology is, and the relevant indicators include intensity and density and the loss of lives. And these contribute to a comprehensive disaster parameters. And this will also inform us of the impacts within certain administrative regions.
Also, we must make full use of various methods to evaluate the impact of the earthquake. For example, the remote sensor and remote sensing interpretation to comprehensively assess the damaged physical quantities like houses, industrial sites, infrastructures, etc. So next page.
每个承载体它的重置单价，比如房屋的承载体的重置单价，还有道路、市政、交通基础设施等等，它的重置单价就能够测算出不同的承载体它的
we can calculate the direct economic loss. For the third part, we must to evaluate the inspection on site. So to make comprehensive of various assessment, we have to evaluate the losses. For example, here, recent years, we especially we assessed the Yunnan earthquake, which occurred in 2021, and and the other earthquakes, we conduct the assessment on spot. We focus on the damage of houses on the earthquake spot. Here is the brief introduction of our assessment on the Qinghai Madu earthquake, which occurred in 2021. And this earthquake is the severe earthquake after the Wenchuan earthquake in 2008. For this earthquake, we mainly conducted the inspection on spot and organize the inspect team to evaluate the losses of house, road, and direct economic losses. And we release the evaluation result through the MEM website. And we could, for these losses, we published on the MEM website. For the next page. Finally, I would like to introduce the afterwards work. For example, the first to establish the relate working mechanism and the technical standard to evaluate the earthquake and improve the workflow and the technical specification for earthquake disaster assessment. The second, to strengthen the research on earthquake disaster loss assessment method, especially to focus on the variation of earthquake assessment. For example, the Yunnan earthquake and the Lushan earthquake occurred last year. And we have to evaluate the secondary loss of the earthquake, not only the direct loss caused by earthquake. And the third aspect is to strengthen the construction of loss assessment system and supporting data. So we have to promote the construction of improvement of earthquake disaster loss assessment system and improve the automation, intelligence, and visualization level of earthquake disaster loss assessment. So this is my sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wu, for your presentation. And also sorry for the interpretation troubles in your session. And now next, I would like to hear about Japan's experiences. So Dr. Makoto Iketa is a senior researcher in Asian Disaster Reduction Center, ADRC. So Dr. Iketa, the floor is yours, and you have 30 minutes for your whole session.
Okay, so thank you very much. I'm Makoto Ikeda, so I'm working for Asian Disaster Reduction Center as a senior researcher. Also, I'm a visiting associate professor at the Kobe University. So today I would like to have a presentation related to the best practice technology and capacity development tools for earthquake risk reduction from Japan. Okay, so this is today's presentation agenda. So content is as so today I have 4 topics. One is geographical features of Japan, and the second one is disaster management in Japan, and the third one is good practice in Japan, earthquake countermeasure. Here we have 5 subtopics, and the last one is a conclusion. So first topic is about the geographical feature of Japan. This figure shows the location of the plate in the world and the number of the earthquake of magnitude 4 or greater occurring. The data is for the period of 2011 to 2020. It shows that many earthquakes occur along plate boundaries, including Asian countries. So let me show the plate boundary in the density of Japan. The area around Japan is very complex with 4 intersecting plates. There are the Philippine plates and the Pacific plates and the European plate and the North American plate. According to the geological features, we have many earthquakes in the past, and there are concerns about the future large-scale earthquakes. At present, the mechanism of earthquake occurrence have been scientifically clarified. However, once upon a time in Japan, earthquakes were believed to be brought about by the big catfish. This led to a newspaper which published in 1855 that depicted people trying to keep big catfish at bay. Let me now introduce some of the major past earthquakes that have occurred in Japan. The figure above shows the 1896 Meiji Sanriku earthquake and tsunami. This disaster struck the same area as the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011. It was killing about 22,000 people. The Great Kanto earthquake of September 1 in 1923, which killed over the 100,000 people. As will be explained later, September 1 is now designated as a Disaster Prevention Day. This year also marks the 100th anniversary of the Great Kanto earthquake. Next, although not an earthquake, I will show the Issei 1 typhoon that occurred in 1959. This disaster is also one of the major disasters in our history of Japan. We had more than 5,000 people died. And next is the Great Hanshin Awaji earthquake that occurred in January 1995. It was a major disaster that hit in Kobe City, where I live now. More than 6,400 people were killed by this disaster. It also occurred during the cold season in January, so the victims suffered hard sleep from the cold. Next is the Great East Japan earthquake that occurred in March 2011. More than 22,000 people died and are missing. It became one of the most significant disasters in the history of Japan. This disaster led to the updating of many disaster-related plans. This is the Kumamoto earthquake that occurred 7 years ago in 2016 in Kumamoto Prefecture. Historical buildings such as the Kumamoto Castle and temples collapsed, but now it's been rebuilt. In the past 100 years of the history, Japan has many explained about the major earthquakes. So people have learned a lot from their experience with the earthquakes and have taken many actions to protect their lives. So I would like to introduce some good practice related to DRR later on. So in addition, as I indicated earlier, Japan's geographical features are located on 4 tectonic plates. For this reason, there are fears that a large-scale earthquake may occur in the future. One is the Tokyo inland earthquake, which will hit directly under the Tokyo metropolitan area. And the other one is a Nankai Trough earthquake. There is a concern that the Tokyo inland earthquake occurred in the Kanto region, including Tokyo, according to the government's assumption of the magnitude of 7.3. 175,000 houses are expected to be completely destroyed, and the 11,000 people to be died. Next is the Nankai Trough earthquake. This disaster is predicted to cause widespread tsunami damage, mainly in the coastal area of Western Japan. According to the government's assumptions, the probability of the occurrence within 13 years is 17 to 18%. Okay, so let me move on to the next topic is disaster management in Japan. Japan's first law on disaster reduction is the Disaster Countermeasure Basic Act. It was developed in 1962. As you can see in this slide, the Disaster Countermeasure Basic Act contains the 8 basic items for disaster prevention. This first Disaster Countermeasure Basic Act was developed in the wake of the 1959 Ise-1 typhoon. The Disaster Countermeasure Basic Act is updated as needed after each major disaster. For instance, the contents of the Disaster Countermeasure Basic Act were debuted immediately after the Great Hanshin earthquake and the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011. The Central Disaster Management Council is one of the Cabinet's council on the key policies. It is established in a cabinet office under the Disaster Countermeasure Basic Act. The Central Disaster Management Council is responsible for promoting comprehensive disaster countermeasures in consultation with the prime ministers and ministers of state for disaster management. Also, Japan has a basic disaster management plan that describes more detailed disaster prevention measures. And this slide shows the administrative structure in Japan. We have 47 prefectures and 1718 cities, towns, villages, municipalities. So geographical situation is quite different in each prefecture and city level. So that, according to these reasons, local disaster management plans are prepared in each prefecture and cities. The contents of the local disaster management plans are considered following different geographical situations. Okay, so let me move on to the next topic. I would like to show the good practices in Japan. So why do we need disaster reduction measures? So in recent years, disaster risk reduction investment has become a key phrase. As the figure on the left illustrates clearly, if a certain level of the investment in disaster reduction is addressed, the hindrance to the economical growth can be minimized even in the event of the disaster. So it is necessary to set aside a certain budget for DRR in the national and local government budgets. So first topic is about the case 1, earthquake resistant of the school in Hyogo. So in the past 10 years, the government budget has been actively used to improve the earthquake resistance of the schools. This chart shows this figure shows the status of the school earthquake resistance in the Hyogo Prefecture. So blue one indicates the national government, and the orange one indicates the status in the Hyogo Prefecture. In 2010, around 65% of the public schools in the Hyogo Prefecture were earthquake resistant, but by 2018, the figure had reached almost 100%. Let me show you some photos of the earthquake resistant. All of them are public schools in Hyogo Prefecture. In this photo, the exterior wall has been reinforced with dialogue braces. So in Japan, school gymnasiums are often used as an evacuation site in times of disaster. This requires that the school gymnasiums be earthquake resistant. The photo on the right shows the actual evacuation site. The photo on the left shows the gymnasium with the earthquake resistant. So this photo shows the earthquake resistant interior of the school in Sendai City. It is also used as a space for children who are relaxing. So second case is the Hyogo Wide Area Disaster Prevention Center. Hyogo Prefecture has established 6 wide area disaster prevention centers in the prefecture. It is stocked a warehouse for the storing supplies, food, water, and other items in the event of the disasters. This photo shows the warehouse of the Hyogo Wide Area Disaster Prevention Center. So in case of the large scale of disaster, we should make a mutual support with any prefectures. The Union of Kansai Government was established in December 2010. So this aimed to deal with the challenges that are spread beyond the prefecture's borders, thus establishing a foundation of the decentralization of the authority for the recovery activities. So now let me introduce the real activities at the community level. So Hirono, just a moment. So case 3 is the Hirono town in Iwate Prefecture. So Hirono town is a municipality located in the northernmost coastal area of the Iwate Prefecture. In here. So Hirono town is affected by the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011. Right picture is taken in the event of the disaster. So left picture is taken in 2016 after disaster. It's the same place. So this town has much experience of the large scale of the disaster in history. Therefore, they are trying to transfer disaster memory to the next generations. This picture shows the monument of the Showa Sanrik earthquake in 1933. So it is indicating these 3 sentences. So there are several communities in the Hirono town. This picture shows the meeting which conducted by the community leaders at the Yagi Inami community of Hirono town. So they discuss about the more detailed DRR activities such as DRR drills, making a hazard map, something like that. So also they have been managing a community site and route, evacuation site and route supported by the government, local government. As I mentioned, they develop a community hazard map by themselves. As you can see, there are some yellow colored houses like this. So elder people is living in these houses. So this means that in case of a disaster, they can support for elder people as a mutual support. So okay, let me move on in the host cases information sharing national early warning system named J Alert. So J Alert is a nationwide instant warning system that provides information on the earthquake early warnings and major tsunami warnings. This information is provided to our smartphone as emergency alert emails and to municipal disaster prevention administrative radio system. So this is a screen of the information provided to individual smartphone. The information is including one earthquake early warning, tsunami warning, emergency warning, and hazard and evacuation information. Okay, so this is the last cases. Name is residents in the need of assistance for evacuation in case of the Fukuoka city. So this is a local disaster management plan which formulated by Fukuoka city. Following the disaster countermeasure basic act, Fukuoka city shows the description about the list of residents in need of assistance for evacuation in their local disaster management plan. So this image is a flowchart of the using list of residents in need of assistance for evacuation. So first, residents in need of assistance fill in the information into the format and submit to the Fukuoka city government. After that, Fukuoka city shares this information to communities. After checking, and communities can support residents such as elder peoples when disaster happens. So this is just for information. So this is the application format of the list. So as you can see, there are many items in this format, as you can see. Okay, so last is my conclusion. I would like to mention the only one thing. As you can see, last one, assuming the large-scale earthquake that is feared to occur in the future, wide area cooperation beyond the nation borders and technical cooperation is very necessary. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Ikeda, for your insightful and instructive presentations. Now we will from Republic of Korea. So there are two speakers for Korea. So first speaker will be Dr. Haewon Kim, who is Senior Researcher of Earthquake Countermeasures Research Team in National Disaster Management Research Institute. She will be presenting on the topic of earthquake risk assessment technology and disaster prevention measures in Korea. Dr. Kim, are you available?
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Haewon Kim. I work for National Disaster Management Research Institute. And today, I'm honored to participate in the seminar. I'm start the presentation now. 한국어로 발표를 하도록 하겠습니다.
I'm going to speak in Korean today. The theme of today's message is this. Please move on to the next page. I'm going to talk about the earthquake damages in Korea and development of the earthquake risk assessment technology and how that earthquake disaster prevention measurement are established. Move. Next page, please. In 2017, Pohang City was located in the south of Korea. There was earthquake occurred. Its magnitude was 5.4. It was a small city. Nevertheless, the huge damages happens in terms of the houses and schools. And more importantly, it was that before, just one day before the university entry exams, so a whole population over there was in chaotic situation. Next move. Next, please. Next, in the very city, the Pohang city, you can see the picture of a full-story steel structure building on the very spot and at the very minute where the earthquake happened. Please play that video clips. what happened to the customers in that floor? Those who haven't experienced that earthquake, there are so many in Korea. If I were in that situation, the third floor, I would have been really panicked. Next page, please. You can see the inside of the structure. Whole building was shaken completely. Stream cooler was broken. All the sceneries are completely wet by the water. And especially, there's equipment over 200 kilometers weight were shaken and collapsed. And underneath, a lot of equipment are collapsed either. Next slide, please. The slide you can see the number of buildings that were damaged because of the earthquake. By the color, it was what they were indicated, depending on the number of cases. If the cases are high, it was recorded with red color. If the cases are low, it was colored green. As you could see in the center, surrounding where the red color spot, there's a green color areas. Your mixture, the reason why it's a mixed is because of the building structure, condition structure. There we found out that there were differences. Next slide, please. According to that occurrence, for example, 5 cases fire happened. Compared to other cases around the world, it can be low. But we consider through this case that how the fire was provoked after the earthquake. As you could see, the time difference. Together with the Pohang earthquake, the fire happened, but it happened depending on that after earthquake, that seismic damages happened in between 3 or 4 days. Even if it's not a big scale of earthquake, but all the households or the institute that are using the electric equipment, we should be careful of using that all those equipment. You will learn through this case. Through this picture, what you could see is the areas of Hunghae-ub or Changyang, that area where the Pohang city, when the Pohang city earthquake happened, depending on the time, 7 o'clock or 3 p.m., 5 p.m., 9 p.m. If you compare to when the population increases, it turned out to be green. But the population is low, it turned out to be blue. At 9 p.m., the picture, you could see the number of population dropped. When you see that the red color spot, where that institute, where people gathered around the location. Next, as you can see, that changes movings of a residential population. This shows the high school areas, especially female students and male students, and depending on the ages, we investigated. If you see the movement, changes of their movement, there was difference between the gender and the ages. After the earthquake happened, especially male population-wise, in group, they moved out. 30% of them moved out of it from the location. As for female students, they moved 30 minutes afterwards, and then other people moved. The interesting point was for the group of people in their 40s, Increasingly, the number of population increased, and then later on it reduced. We consider the mothers of the students who try to collect these students. And also, after earthquake happened, previous week, there is a content that populations previous week compared to previous week before the earthquake happened. And we could see after the earthquake to the nearby small cities, the population moved out. Age-wise, we could see that the elderly level of people had a less movement than compared to other age group. Next, please. 2017, after the Pohang had earthquake, we had a survey upon the people resident in Pohang city. We asked a question: where they moved out, evacuated? Especially they said at the nearby buildings or the streets. And the habit of the transportation-wise, we asked, usually they walked on their foot, or they used to evacuate by car. And we asked the reason why they use a car is because they wanted to evacuate with a family, or to find out the safer site, they needed the vehicle to move out a long distance. And also, upon the previous question, the people who use the transportation, the tool, we ask a second question: how will they evacuate if they had another chance? And majority of them, they answer that they would move by a car rather than on foot if for the sake of convenient evacuation, you should consider the case that you have to move by car.
여러 가지 이 지진에 대한 많은 소문과 말들이 많았습니다. 하지만 지진은 시간과 지역, 규모라는 세 가지 요소를 한 번에 예측하기 어렵기 때문에 한국의 기상청에서도 지진을 예측하지 못한다는 정보를 트위터에 올리기도 했습니다. 다음. 저희는 국외 사례에서
we surveyed other cases based on overseas cases.
In America,
we learned that in the US there are 18 risk standards, and by using engineering, they calculated the number of losses and of lives and the economic losses. In Japan, in Tokyo and Kanagawa, under the assumption that there are the same magnitude earthquake occurring, they calculated which place will be affected, and they utilize this data to prevent a fire and aftershocks. Next slide, please. Based on that, in Korea as well,
alone,
we developed earthquake risk assessment. This survey started in 2022, and it will last till 2024, and including Sejong University, 6 organizations are participating in this research. Basically, ultimately, we will develop technologies, but we will also aiming to develop policies and instruments as well. Next, please. Last year, we researched Pohang earthquake case. if it's not the epicenter of Pohang earthquake, if the same magnitude earthquake occurs in other areas, which we studied which area will be hit hard. In Pohang City, there are 55 districts, and among those, the hardest hit district will be Haedo, Songdo, and Chang'an districts. In the area we're actually affected by earthquake, Hunghaeub ranked 41st. Depending on the research and the technology, the level of damage will vary, but Haedo and Songdo districts are estimated to or expected to have greater damage than Hunghae. With this outcome only, if you see the red area, these areas are the region, many buildings will be affected. So prevention measures should be needed. Next, please. This slide shows earthquake, unlike earthquake risk assessment. This slide is about the capacity of local communities responding to earthquake. Depending on their capabilities, the results can differ, especially earthquake occurs at the same time and affects a wide area. So early response is very important. In order to respond to earthquake, we selected 5 important capabilities, and with that, we applied those factors into 4 areas. As a result, the areas, especially Pohang, ranked the highest grade, and the grades were different in local communities and their capabilities. Next, please. Risk map and capacity assessment are still under research and development, but if it is completed, then we may deliver such implications to local communities. For example, among the outcomes of risk assessment, even if communities have the same 3 grades, depending on their buildings and evacuation capabilities, community B and C should develop different types of measures. And on the right side, if you see, even if they have the same average score of capabilities, depending on their training and education, they should set up different and tailored measures. Such a system should require regular review and improvements. Next, as mentioned earlier, these 2, risk assessment and capacity capability review, requires regulations and legislation. Also, they require working level experts. To do that, we suggested such factors should be considered in the government's working plan. And about its outcome, we are developing a close interactive collaboration system. Next, please. Lastly, the goal of earthquake emergency management in Korea should have a virtuous circle as follows. At the prevention level, depending on communities, we should set up the earthquake measurement countermeasures and Depending on the scenarios and the community's risk level, we should provide training and we should strengthen the capabilities of local communities. And for communities with high risk, we should improve their responding plan. Korea has less experience of earthquake. So if it occurs, then it is likely to have greater impact and damage. The current surveys, I hope, will be helpful to respond in the future. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Kim, for your presentation. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Jong-Han Lee. Dr. Lee is a senior researcher in National Disaster Management Research Institute, working in Earthquake Disaster Prevention Research Team. He will present on the topic of post-earthquake rapid inspection techniques in Korea. Dr. Lee, the floor is yours. You have 15 minutes.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jong-Han Lee from NDMI, Korea. Today, my presentation will be about application and improvement of post-earthquake rapid inspection technique and scheme of buildings in Korea. For better understanding, I will make my presentation in Korean. 한국말로 발표를 하도록 하겠습니다. 오늘
I will
제가
speak in Korean. Today's
Yes, I'm going to speak in
contents that I'm going
Korean,
to share
and
with
what I'm going
is
to talk is
the
the earthquake activities in Korea and
and
post-earthquake
post-earthquake
rapid inspection techniques and its application. And I will quote earthquakes in 2016, and I will deliver the implications and also introduce the future surveys to be planned. As you see in the slide, from the past to date, there are earthquake activities. Historically, data were recorded. In 2016, we had earthquake in Gyeongju, but before that, Korea was regarded as a safe haven for earthquake. However, in 2016, earthquake occurred in Gyeongju and later one more in Pohang. So people started thinking that it is not safe anymore. So the actual document shows that according to the chronicles of the three states, it says that the ground was shaken and houses were collapsed. And another history record of Goryeo era, the ground was also shaken after 1930s. Here are the earthquake activities and tsunamis. The first record was Sanggyesa earthquake, and relatively recent cases are Mountain Songni earthquake and Hongsong earthquake. The latter one occurred in the urban areas, causing many economic losses and damages in buildings. But fortunately, there were no loss of lives, but around 100 buildings were damaged and 1,000 buildings were cracked. And later, in the Middle East Sea, there were earthquakes causing economic losses as well. After that, 4.5 and 5 magnitude earthquakes took place. For example, in Mountain Ode and in 2016, 5.8 magnitude earthquake occurred in Gyeongju and later one in Pohang.
굉장히 컸었습니다. 실제로 포항 지진에서는 이제 그
We had
포항자가
huge damage in building, and also in Pohang.
통역 문제 때문에 조금만 천천히 말씀해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Please speak slowly for interpretation. In the case of Pohang, we lost one life, but it was not direct damage. It occurred after the earthquake. Later, this slide introduces the major earthquakes occurring in Korea. As you see, it shows Gyeongju and Pohang earthquakes. Those are major earthquakes causing huge damage. And next, this chart shows that in Korea since 1978, densification observation for earthquakes started. According to that, on average, 19.1 cases occurred, and the status increased to 70.6, 3.7 times higher after starting digital observation. It gave many implications, such as seismic observation networks becomes densified, and equipment performance and analysis technology were improved. So according to those advancements, the cases of earthquake observed increased. And after major shocks such as earthquakes in Gyeongju and Pohang, aftershocks also increased. While experiencing the recent cases, people started thinking that Korea is no longer a safe place from earthquakes. The main topic of today's presentation is the risk assessment of earthquake on buildings. In fact, this post-earthquake rapid inspection techniques was developed to prevent secondary damage of aftershocks. So it shows, is it okay whether the actual residents can stay inside the building? So in general, those affected it is slightly different from the damage assessment for the victims. And this technique is under the Act on the Preparation for Earthquakes and Volcanic Eruptions and Enforcement Decree of the Act on the Preparation for Earthquakes and Volcanic Eruptions. So we can differentiate the technique developments into three levels. In Korea, we do not have enough earthquake experiences. Therefore, we referred to many cases in Japan, China, and other East Asian countries. If you look into the first to third earthquake disaster countermeasures, in 1995, the first countermeasure was set, and in 2007, when Odaesan earthquake occurred, Earthquake Disaster Countermeasure Act was enacted, and in 2009, it was enforced. Since, as I mentioned, we do not have enough experience, when Odaesan earthquake occurred, such risk assessment was not included. We simply conducted the damage status survey. So after that, the Odesan earthquake, we improved the risk assessment technology, and there was a growing need to develop further techniques as well. In 2013, this risk assessment techniques were developed, and there are two phases. The first phase was researching overall condition of buildings, and especially their exteriors. For example, any harmful materials or objects, and the level of risk depending on the materials and the land. Based on these factors, we assessed risk. In the second phase, we surveyed both interior and exterior of the buildings. We checked the level of risk of the affected, damaged structures of buildings. So depending on the features of materials such as wood and concrete, we examined the risk. As mentioned, from 2011 to 2013, we developed techniques, and for communities, we developed the guidelines and standard ordinances of post-earthquake rapid inspection techniques. After that, we used these techniques, and after experiencing earthquakes in Gyeongju and Pohang, we revised those ordinances, and in order to make it in line with the actual case, we conducted research to improve those guidelines, and using functions, we achieved those revisions. And in August this year, we are planning to revise the guideline of post-earthquake rapid inspection. And it includes emergency treatment and aid as well. This slide shows the improvements after Pohang earthquake. The first phase was actually would have some gaps depending on local communities. So we amended it to reduce gaps among different risk assessment techniques. So we improved clarities and integrities. And in the second phase, we used the common forms, but after revision, we reinforced concrete structure. And depending on the structure, such as URM, steel, and wood, we differentiated the damage. For example, steel structures are covered with finishing materials, so it is difficult to visually identify damage. So most risk assessment techniques consider the list of buildings or cracks of buildings, the thick of cracks or width of cracks are used to assess the damage. In case of Gyeongju and Pohang, we conducted risk assessment, and here are the results. In Gyeongju case, we inspected 1,289, and since it was the first trial, there are many errors and failures, but then we improved. So even in Pohang case, we also inspected the damage and severity and urgency of the case. So we selected buildings and applied into the techniques. Actually, we have limited numbers of experts. So the MOIS, the Ministry of Interior and Safety, supported a lot. In the first phase, we focused on the buildings nearby the epicenter of the earthquake. And also, we focused on the soft story buildings, such as pillow T buildings. Later, we also included the severely damaged buildings and low story concrete buildings, which have significant damages. And lastly, in the last phase, we conducted a survey for inhabitants. So this is the picture that I collected the experts and conducted surveys. As I mentioned earlier, from epicenter within 5 kilometers, high-risk buildings were concentrated, and the damage was concentrated within 10 kilometers from the epicenter. And a risk assessment was applied to the areas up to 15 kilometers. In a day, 114 teams and 320 investigators joined. So in total, 777 teams and 1,880 investigators engaged, and Ministry of Interior and Safety and the Ministry of Land Infrastructure and Transportation joined as well. And also other institutes collaborated as well.
대략적으로 이제 15km 반경 내에서 조사가 이루어졌고 실제로 이제 그
So the research was conducted within a 15-kilometer radius of the epicenter. So through the map, we put the buildings with high risk, and we attached the mark called set danger on the surface of the building. In fact, we analyzed the features of buildings affected during the Pohang earthquake. So through this, we selected candidate buildings to be researched first, and we differentiated those buildings into 41 types. Depending on that, we assessed them as based on the level of damage, such as complete collapse, extensive, and slight and moderate. Most cases were unreinforced masonry structures, and the second building with high risk was soft story structures, and the rest of them were steel moment frame buildings and wooden buildings. Those low-story buildings were not applied with seismic design. So these buildings accounted for 45.6% of the total damaged buildings, almost half, and low stories accounted for 67.8%, and detached houses accounted for 74.1% of the total damaged buildings. in 1988, in Korea, the earthquake-resistant structure were applied only to 6-story buildings. But after experiencing Pohang earthquake, we applied those techniques to all buildings. But before that, many buildings were not applied with earthquake-resistant techniques. So, we selected about 6 million buildings, and we identified addresses, structure types, number of floors, and design adaptations. And we researched 17 metropolitan cities and shared it with those, shared the results with those cities. Lastly, these are the research currently going on from our side. So we estimated the result of seismic damage using grading 2 by 2 kilometers. So we can estimate where and which building. It is difficult to identify exactly which building can be affected. So we are trying to combine and utilize link GIS information, building and seismic fragility functions. And we are trying to improve additional functions such as spatial and functional object adjustment of earthquake damage estimation technology. So we can use these circle type boundaries or square type boundaries. So if we use this, then we can estimate which area can be affected. This is what I prepared, and thank you for your listening.
Dr. Lee, thank you for your presentation. Before moving on to the next parts, there were some questions posted in our Q&A chat box. So I'd like to address some of the questions. So there are some questions for Dr. Kim, and I believe one question for Dr. Lee. So for Dr. Kim, one of the questions is that what data source was used to get the population movements?
2018년 행정안전부 공공 빅데이터 사업에서 연구한 내용이고요. 이 데이터는 이동통신사 3사가 있는데
Data was invested. We network suppliers upon 76 data that we received from the data suppliers, 5 data suppliers we investigated.
Thank you so much. I believe there was some lag between the Korean and English interpretation. So could you also upload your answers to the Q&A chat box as well? Thank you so much. And also another question to Dr. Kim is that, like, before the construction of the buildings, how can we actually control the liquefaction and the subsidence of the soils for coming earthquakes?
네, 그 두 번째, 세 번째도 그러면 답변해 드리도록 하겠습니다.
So I'm going to answer to the second and third question. The soils, in terms of the soils of the earthquake, I truly believe that you have technologies in Japan and Korea. In Korea too, we are in the process of improving the technologies in terms of the soils in order to enhance. Then I think we should do that business. We have to work on that matter. And question number 3, depending on what area deep learning study it can be, what I understand is casualties, to reduce the casualty.
대피를 위한 딥러닝 연구인지 또는 피해 조사를 위한 딥러닝 연구인지에 따라서 이게 어떤 관점인지가 좀 많이 틀릴 것 같습니다.
The perspective can be, depending on the perspective, can be different.
할수 없다라고 하면 요즘은 드론들도 있고 드론의 영상들을 빨리 입수하고 파악하고 넓은 지역에 많은 데이터를 한꺼번에
In the large area, in order to deep learning technologies.
이런 그 배분이나 또는 자원이나 이런 것들에 대해서도 조금
In terms of the manpower and resources, deep learning skills, I truly believe we have to constantly need to develop and
Okay, thank you for your answer, Dr. Kim. 죄송하지만 조금 그 렉이 있어서 그 채팅 박스로도 답변을 해주시면 좀 감사하겠습니다. She will also post the answers to the chat box as well. And there's one question for Dr. Lee as well. So, is there a planning and designing guidelines for the development on earthquake-prone areas?
조금 질문을 좀 이해하기가 좀 어렵긴 하는데, 그러니까 지진
It is difficult to understand the question, but are you talking? I think it is about the guideline of earthquake-prone areas, and we do not have the exact standard to estimate which place is prone to earthquake. Actually, Dr. Kim is conducting this earthquake risk assessment, and regarding that, there will be some areas that we can add and help. In the ministry, currently, the third comprehensive plan for earthquake response is being developed. It is focusing on the private sector's response, and currently there's nothing that we can improve or add about that.
네, 이상입니다.
Thank you so much for your answer. As you all know, there is a Q&A chat box that's been activated, and there are lots of questions uploaded, and I believe that all the audience can see this questions and answers as well. So please go ahead and take a look. And for the speakers as well, there are some questions that have been accidentally clicked answers. So if you need more backup explanations about the questions and answers, then you can please go ahead and give an ideas in the discussion session later on. Now I'd like to move on. Yes, thank you. Now I'd like to move on to the next part. So to expand our experience sharing and the capacity development related to earthquake risk management, we have also invited the expert from Mongolia, where the cities are increasingly facing earthquake risks and investing efforts to reduce the related disaster risks. Ms. Bazarcha Duzgai works for National Emergency Management Agency in Mongolia and is head of Disaster Risk Management and Assessment Division in Risk Management Department in Nima. So, Ms. Dutkai, the floor is yours, and you have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, hello everyone. I am Basra from National Emergency Management Agency of Mongolia. It's my great pleasure to present about overview of the Mongolian experience and capacity development needs for earthquake disaster risk reduction. And I will present the presentation under the contents of, next slide, please, of earthquake risk in Mongolia, legal environment for disaster risk assessment, highlights in some activities and way forward. Thank you. Next one. Mongolia is in a highly active seismic zone in Central Asia, historically strong earthquake with magnitudes 8 and more have occurred 4 times, and magnitude 7 more than 20 times since 1905. Okay, please, next one. And earthquake frequencies and intensities in Mongolia are increasing according to the registered events. The graph shows that the number of earthquakes in 2021 is a 6-fold increase compared to the average in the last 10 years. In addition, the 3 earthquake events with magnitude 6 and more recently occurred. And Tankesum in Gagartamak in 2020, and also twice in Sumeria in Khubskat province in 2021. Okay, please, next one. The earthquake occurred, this earthquake occurred in relatively sparsely populated area, so there was not much loss to human life or health. The building some building was in nearby Sumeria were damaged, and also Khubskat Lake, which is in 262 meter deep, was frozen at the time. Please look at some cracks on the ice from the picture. Okay, please, next slide. The National Seismic Intensity Zone map of Mongolia 500 return period was developed in 2020 by the Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics of Mongolia. Based on this zone map, the National Seismic Intensity Level map, colored with red, orange, yellow, green, and dark green, is reproduced by the Asian Development Bank Technical Assistant Project Team in 2022. Looking at this identified levels in all Mongolian territory is in earthquake, very high, and moderate levels. Okay, please, next one. And these days, we are working to make national disaster risk profile. Here is an example of household exposure to earthquakes. Looking at this data, most households are in very high and high levels of MSK scale of 8 and more. Okay, please, next one. So we have created a legal environment for disaster risk assessment due to the reformulated law on disaster protection in 2017. It contributes much to strengthening disaster risk management in the country. This slide shows the current legal documents for disaster risk assessments. And we are trying to provide risk assessment results to make risk-informed planning, decision-making, as well as risk-sensitive financing. Also, the communities can gain their awareness and understanding of risks by participating in initial risk assessments. Even though we need to improve risk assessment methodologies, human resource capacity, and capability on managing risks and risk analysis. Okay, please, next one. Okay, regarding earthquake risk reduction activities, and we would like to highlight the building codes in Ulaanbaatar case, training and exercise, early warning, and financing in disaster risk reduction. Here is the building code slide. Building code, we call it building passport. Mongolia focuses on inspecting buildings that were built before 2002, including residential apartments, commercial and community buildings, such as schools, kindergartens, hospitals, and other state-owned buildings to assess their earthquake resistance. As of 2022, 51% of all planned buildings were being inspected. Please, next slide. And as a result of the inspections, a total of 36.4% of the inspected buildings is assessed totally not to be resistant to earthquake and also not to be used again. Only 60 apartment buildings and 17 commercial and community buildings have currently been destroyed for replacing new ones. It occupies only 22.3%. And you know, redevelopment and replacement require plenty of investment. Okay, please, next slide. For improving everyone's and community awareness of earthquake prevention and preparedness, Mongolia celebrates Earthquake Awareness Day and Earthquake Warning Signal Day at every fourth Wednesday and Thursday of March. During these days, we organize earthquake drill exercise working by alert signal at national level. However, some people ignore the events. Thus, it's necessary to make disaster risk reduction promotion and training more to communities. Okay, please, next slide. This slide, and here is some training and drill exercise. And I would like to note the recently organized strategic command staff exercise on earthquake prevention at the national level. It was held between 7th to 9th of June 2023 this year. It's the first exercise with engagement of President of Mongolia and the National Security Council. It results in practice in how to respond to state's emergency situation caused by strong earthquake hit in Ulaanbaatar area, and also estimating our state and local reserves, emergency personnel, and other related stakeholders' capacities and collaborations to cope with earthquake. Okay, please, next one. So here, and we face some challenges to early warning system development. Today in Ulaanbaatar, there are 50 siren towers for warning. These kinds of 50 siren tower can reach about only 30% of the Ulaanbaatar population. And so moreover, the current early warning system is out of date and cannot disseminate disaster warning information, including warning mass message to the public. It cannot catch up with the rapid technological developments such as 4G and 5G, which are telecommunication service provider. Okay, please, next slide. And because I have 10 minutes, and so I just overview of these slides. And okay, this one, and according to the survey or comparisons of expenditures on disaster management measures, and post-disaster investment is much higher than disaster prevention. Now, please see the graph. The blue is prevention, the orange is response and the early recovery cost. See, another one is one of the key one of the key changes of the reform-elected law on disaster protection is financial investment in DRR. The article is shown in this slide. Okay, thank you. The next one is my last slide. At the national level, first and foremost, we need to increase community resilience to earthquakes through gaining their awareness and understanding of risks and engagement in initial risk assessments and disaster risk reduction training, and also improve disaster risk reduction legal frameworks and standards. Increase financial investment in disaster prevention and preparedness, particularly risk assessment, building inspection and building codes, retrofitting and replacement. And to increase human resource capacity, specializing in disaster risk reduction and risk analysis. And we need to introduce technology and innovations, especially in early warning and building retrofitting, and also enhance sector coordination and international cooperation. And in addition, at the regional level, we wish the countries to share their experience and achievements in technology and innovation, conduct joint research and study on earthquakes, and also support technical assistance to build community resilience resilience. And okay, thank you very much for your attention. And also, and taking this opportunity, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers, UNDR and TCS, and also all panelists and participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Dudkai. Thank you for your very informative and interesting presentation. We have two questions for you from the floor. The first is that since you have already heard from other China, Japan, and Korea countries, their ideas on the disaster management, earthquake risk reduction. So what are the opportunities and challenges for Mongolia to apply and replicate those practices that we heard from the CJK countries? That is the first question. And the second question is actually, I believe this is answered by the last slide, but what are the capacity building needed for Mongolia to improve the earthquake risk management? Please give us your personal ideas on maybe the most urgent, most needed parts of Mongolia.
Okay, and thank you very much for your questions. And okay, it's just my personal view, and I'm very happy to hear about and presentations of the Korean, Chinese, and the Japanese experts and researchers, and their presentations are very scientific, and also they included so much data in it, and it's a very good exercise and for that. And so for Mongolia, and we really wanted to work with our and regional level countries, especially in Northeast Asian countries, and we located in the same geographical locations, you know, and also in some disasters, some types of disasters are similar. For example, the earthquake, and we learned a lot, and also we need to improve in our some technology and innovations. What kind of technology and innovation you use and to prevent, or this is to early warning for the earthquake, and we really wanted to work on it, and also we really wanted to study in more and to work with more in this field. As the next one is in the mine one. Okay, and absolutely in here, and there's some working together at the regional level is a very good way to prevent any disasters. And you know, and earthquake is a very harmful type of disaster. It's very difficult to prevent, but we can do that in human technology, human and innovation. Also this is in our plan, and we can do that. In these cases, and John, it's better to conduct joint some research work and study on earthquake prevention. Also this how to register this earthquake data, how to manage the data, and also in how to make the analysis of the risk assessments and disaster risk assessments, also the post-disaster needs and damage assessment. And we really wanted to work on that in this case. Okay, thank you so much. And if my colleagues, Mongolian participants, if you have any more comments and feedback, and to in this case to add my comments, my response, and please feel free and to add what I missed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Dudkai, for your presentation. And many thanks to all of our speakers for sharing your insights throughout our session. Now we would like to move on to the discussion part. So now we would like to invite other countries to participate in an more open discussion and share their experience in addressing and reducing the earthquake risk, or to share what kind of capacity development support their country would need to better address and reduce the earthquake risk. If anyone from the floor would like to share their experience, please share it in the chat, either in the chat box, or you may raise your hand and we will give you the access to the microphone. If there are no participants to speak up, then I would like to readdress some of the interesting questions that came out from the previous presentations. So there was some questions for Dr. Wang and Dr. Wu, and it would be very nice if you can readdress. I know that you have already answered to these questions, but it would be really nice to readdress on this question and give an answer again. So the question that I received was, what remote sensing data and sensors were used to monitor the earthquake damage? Can either Dr. Wang or Dr. Wu give an answer to this question? I see they're not available at the moment, so maybe I'll move on to other questions. So there are some questions that had been already answered by speakers from other countries, but maybe there's one question for Dr. Ikeda as well. So is there a planning or design guidelines for the development on earthquake-prone areas? Can Dr. Ikeda answer to this question?
私のプレゼンテーションで示した通り、日本では
Okay, I don't like to speak in Japanese, so interpreter will do that for me. So that is a local areas capability of reconstruction about the earthquake. We just figured it out. The books written about how preventing that after earthquake and post earthquake. We just created the books and written about the material, then spread those information to others. So that's what we did.
So for the previous question that I asked to Dr. Wang and Dr. Wu about the remote sensing data and sensors were used to monitor earthquake damage, they have given me in my message box, so I will read out for them. So Mr. Wu Wei has replied as following: the monitoring of earthquake disaster losses often uses high-resolution optical remote sensing data, such as GF-1 and GF-2 satellites in China. So UAV images are very effective for monitoring the collapsed houses in small areas. So this was his answer. And now I'd like to also ask to Dr. Duzgai from Mongolia. So there is one question about about the warning system. So how fast does the community react after hearing the siren of the warning system in Mongolia?
Okay, this early warning system. Okay, in this case, and we just disseminate the early warning system by the sign towers and laboratory area, and also this some mass messages to their phone. And how long the time, and I cannot say right now it's how long minutes and do they need to gather there. And we usually have some drill exercise in every March, and we just practice and how to use the warning signal there and warning signal. And in this case, and the signal rings in 3 times. And the first one, people just hear the signal and to protect by themselves, maybe, and hide yourself and the cover under the table, maybe. And second signal, and do something more. And second signal, the people can leave the room and leave the house, and they can reach the emergency point. And third signal, and they can already just gather the emergency point of that.
Thank you so much for your
time or not, and do I can explain more?
Oh, if you can, please go ahead.
Yeah, this warning signal. In these cases, and these days, and early warning and development is main challenges for us, and we are just working on how to improve the warning, the warning and devices on it, and also we increase the some emergency points where community gather because just after the earthquake. And in these cases in Ulaanbaatar, and Ulaanbaatar in there in 192 different places we have just designated to receive the community and communities in during the earthquake and some other types of hazards. This number is not quite enough, and we need to increase more according to our Ulaanbaatar population. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. Now, moving on. So I received more general question from the Q&A box. So anyone from the speakers or like other discussants may also speak up. So how can we improve the prediction of earthquake disaster? This is more of a broad general question, but if any of the speakers have ideas on this, please do answer. Thank you. Can Dr. Lee from Korea answer to this question?
예, 질문 자체가 이제 그 prediction of earthquake disaster인데.
Yes, the question was about a prediction warning of earthquake. Prediction of disaster would be impossible. Instead, we can obtain the technologies to estimate the damage based on various earthquake damage experiences and experiments as well. And based on that, we can use the fragility function, and also at the time of evacuation, we can identify damage through the camera, and we can combine various ICT technologies to improve the damage estimation as well.
Thank you for your answer, Dr. Lee. And also this, I also asked this to Dr. Dutkai, but I think this question is related to the question that just answered. So basically what we need to learn is these kind of practices that has been used in other countries as well, and apply them to individuals' countries. So there are the challenges in adopting these kind of practices elsewhere. Because of like differences in geographical issues and population issues, there are differences, but how should we overcome this kind of problem? If any experts have idea on this, please go ahead and answer to this question. 임 박사님 혹시 답변을 해주실 수 있으실까요?
Dr. Kim, can you answer to this question?
네, 한국말로 하겠습니다.
Sorry, but can you repeat the question again?
그 해외 사례들을 한국에 적용하는 한국이나 이제 다른 나라들에
We
있는
look
해외
into the
사례들을
overseas cases,
자국으로 사례들 적용하기 위해서
when we
좀
introduce
점들
those
때문에
cases
어플라이를
into
하기
other
쉽지가
countries,
그것들을
there
잘
are many
어플라이를
differences
하려면
among countries. So,
이렇게 기술적으로 이제 어떤
in order to successfully apply
부분들이
those
많이 바뀌어야 된다고
techniques,
생각이
there
되는데요.
can be
근데
some
이제 전문가들
challenges
입장에서는
for many
어떤 부분이
countries.
가장
So,
필요하다고
from your
생각하세요?
perspective and other experts, how can we overcome those differences?
이게 평가
Yes, there was some connection issues, but as far as I understood, let me answer to the question. I think we can not apply those risk assessment uniformly to all countries because they have all differences in population and infrastructure and development of level. In the US, currently, hazards was used to predict earthquake, and such techniques are being utilized in many countries, such as Korea, Japan, and others. And as I
뭐 일본이나 미국도 하고
US and Japan are already applying, so we need to select the optimal factors and indicators which are fit to our situation. So they should find the optimized way based on those techniques. And these days, computing system and engineering systems are not that different among countries compared to the past, but the matter is how fast they can collect data and how much data they have. So once those tools are being developed, and if there is a consensus that they can utilize those tools into their society, then they can work together with experts and engineers to adopt those techniques. And while applying those techniques to their own country, about challenges, they can utilize these events or seminar or workshops. So instead of focusing on successful cases only, but we should share difficulties and challenges in other trials and errors. So if we share those downsides as well, then those will be also helpful to other countries who are willing to adopt those techniques. And those challenges, I think by doing so, can be resolved, I think.
Thank you for your answer. It was really really informative and also very very informative. Thank you so much. I know that there are some questions that have not been answered in the Q&A chat box, but due to the time limitation, I would like to move on to our next session. So for the questions listed, could experts also give speakers give answers to these questions in the chat box? That will be very much appreciated. Thank you. And now we would like to move on to next session, which is about the sharing opportunities and tools for capacity development for earthquake risk reduction. So here we have our first speaker is Dr. Chung Wang, and Dr. Wang is a director of Institute of Care Life and also a professor at Sichuan University. And he will present on the topic of progress on earthquake early warning and multi-hazard early warning system in China and beyond. Dr. Wang, please, you have 12 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the chance to give the talk. And I'm very glad to see that many participants are from worldwide, many countries. Okay, so I will start. So I'm also the director of Chengdu Research Center of EEW, China Earthquake Administration. So this is what I will present, the background, and then the progress of EEW and MHEW in China, and then my proposal. So first of all, the background. So there are many natural disasters around the world, including the northeast part of Asia and worldwide. Earthquake, debris flow, landslide, wildfire, and urban flooding. Of course, UN has been doing a lot during the last few years. For example, last year, UN is proposing the early warnings for all action plan for the world. And actually, in 2015, the UN first proposed MHEW, multi-hazard early warning system for the world. Back to 2008, when the Wenchuan earthquake occurred, near 70,000 people died. At that time, China did not have the earthquake early warning system technology and then no earthquake early warning network, that no earthquake early warning service. And many people in China expect and wanted the earthquake early warning service as was there in Japan and Mexico. But over the past 15 years, China has made a lot of progress in both EW and MHW systems. Here, I will show you 2 slides to show what is the effect of the system. Here, this is a video captured 10 years ago and in our institute. So this is to show the effect of early warning system. As you may hear the siren, and you can see that there are actually 28 seconds of early warning time when the Chengdu was about 120 kilometers away from the epicenter. And then several years later, about 4 years ago, there was another earthquake in Sichuan. I will show you another video, which is to show that there were. So anyway, so this kind of alerts were received by the public, and also some factories, and even the trains and so on. So many people evacuated, and some trains stopped automatically. And also in this case, many people around the world give praise for this system. So this is of course different from the situation in 2008, because in that case, and there was no EW system in China. And then last year, when there was an earthquake of magnitude 6.8, again in Sichuan, over 40 million people received the alerts through cell phone, television, and loudspeakers. And this year, when Turkey had a big earthquake, the on-site early warning system was shipped to Turkey with the rescue team from China and to serve the rescue purpose of this team. In 2019, China, the ICL actually worked with BMKG of Indonesia to set up an early warning system for the earthquake around Jakarta and West Sumatra. And this system actually is being serving some public of Indonesia. And this system has also been triggered by many earthquakes, with the largest one to be magnitude of 7. These are the sensors, and these are the earthquakes that have triggered the system. And this is an example of the alert. So earthquake is here, and this is the Jakarta, and this is how much time the S wave will arrive at Jakarta. And this was in last year. And last year, the Xiaomi cell phone made from China began to have EW function in Indonesia. Of course, there need many education, training, and also to improve the experience of the service in Indonesia, for example. And also we have some. The last in this stream, the director of China Earthquake Administration announced that the China EW system, the official one, will be successfully built soon. And before that, actually, several years ago, ICL has collaborated with many local governments to set up a big early warning network with sensors of over 8,500 sensors to cover 2.4 million square kilometers. And this system has been triggered by 77 destructive earthquakes. Also, this system actually has been interconnected with that in Nepal to have the very first inter-country EW system. In this case, actually, I would expect that in the future, there would be a global EW system. This shows the list of the earthquakes that have triggered the system. Of course, without reaching the public or the factories, the EW system or the MHEW system would be useless. So to push the last mile of EW service to the public and the factories would be very important. So these are the cell phones that have, or television that have received the alert. And here, this is a full response for when they get the alert from the EW system. So this shows the actual experience of the school, of the students. And all the Chinese-made cell phones sold in China have embedded the EW function in it. And last year, Apple China began to ask for embed the EW function into Chinese in China Apple phones. And also these are the television. And so it's important to collaborate between there's a collaboration between the earthquake administration and the institutes, so that there is a joint force for pushing the EW system in both China and in many other countries. Also, ICL has been working with other institutes in China to improve the multi-hazard early warning system. Here, I will show you some of the achievements of the MHEW systems in China. So MHEW system is for alert for earthquake, landslide, mudslide, and so on. Here, the system has embedded more than 40 data sources for the system. This system has been triggered by over 1,000 earthquake, landslide, debris flow, flash, and urban flooding and wildfires, and etc. There is a wide application of MHEW system because the disasters will approach these sites: schools, communities, subways, state grid, and nuclear power plants, and so on, and the highway. And now, Chengdu is holding the World University Games, and this in this case, our MHEW system is serving the game in Sichuan. And there is both domestic and international collaborations. And also last year, Indonesia held the third multi-hazard early warning conference, which we only joined in Chengdu because of the virus. And last year, ICL with UNESCO China representative held the international conference on multi-hazard early warning system in Chengdu. And this year, the representative of UNDP in China visited ICL. So we have a proposal for the participants of this conference. Let's jointly serve the UN's goal of early warnings for all.
Dr. Wang,
So basically, that is what I want to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your very timely presentation. I noticed that you have more slides to go, but thank you for keeping your time. Now I'd like to move on to the next speaker, Dr. Ikeda. So on behalf of ADRC, Dr. Ikeda will share us some case studies in Japan. So Dr. Ikeda, please go ahead. You have 12 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Can you see my slide?
Yes, we see your slide.
Okay, so thank you very much. Hello again. So in this presentation, I'd like to introduce a case study of the capacity building in Japan briefly. So in Japan, we have two memorial DRR days. One is a disaster preparedness day on September 1st, The other one is a Tsunami Preparedness Day on November 5th. On these days, lots of disaster management drills at various disaster management drills are conducted. So the photo you can see in left, this is disaster management drills conducted by a Kobe City office. And the right one is school drills at the Tokyo Girls. And in addition, how to say, running at the museum is one of the effective way in sharing disaster experience and knowledge. So next, I would like to introduce some DRR museums in Hyogo and Miyagi Prefecture in Japan. So first one is about Disaster Reduction and Human Innovation Institution, which is located in the Kobe City of Hyogo Prefecture. So my office and JICA and UNDRR and University of Hyogo are also located in the same area, same buildings. At the DRI, this museum, the purpose is to separate the word about the vital phase of local history and ensure that the lessons of the Great Hanshin Awaji earthquake in 1995. As you can see, visitors can view DRR films, exhibits, and talking with the storyteller for learning DRR. So this photo is also same building of the Disaster Reduction and Human Renovation Institution, DRI. So we can confirm a predicted tsunami height of the Nankai Trough earthquake that are explained on the first presentation. So you can find the yellow line in here. So yellow line shows the predicted 34-meter tsunami, which will be hit in Kuroshio City in Kochi prefectures. And the second is about the disaster prevention showroom at the Kobe City Hall, which is located at the Kobe City office. So this hall has many exhibits, including the hazard map, display, and disaster prevention tools. Also, this DRR hall is open for all of residents, so it is not necessary to pay. So, and it's easy to access for everyone because it's located near center of Kobe City Station. So third one is about the Nojima Fault Preservation Museum, which is located in Awaji Island of Hyogo Prefecture. So visitors can learn about the earthquake and disaster prevention at this museum. So left photo, this one shows the real displacement of the Hanshin Awaji earthquake. Right one, this photo shows the real affected house by these disasters. So next I would like to introduce museum and recovery activities in Miyagi Prefecture. So this is based on the experience of the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011. So this is about the ruins of the Great East Japan earthquake Kesenuma City Memorial Museum, which is located in Miyagi Prefecture. So this museum is a kind of the historic ruins of this disaster. So we can confirm the affected school building in here. So this slide shows the Minami Sansan Shopping Street, which is affected by the Great East Japan earthquake in Minami Sanrik town. So people tried to reconstruct and make a new town named Sansan Shopping Street. As you can see the right side photo, this one. So this town continued to serve as symbols of the reconstruction, attracting many visitors from the outside the prefecture and even from the overseas. So that is the explanation about some activities after the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011. So next, I'd like to introduce one of the famous community-based disaster risk management, CBDRM activities. Name is ISA Caravan. So this CBDRM activity is conducted by the NPO organization. Name is Plus Arts. So people can learn disaster prevention activities more familiar and more enjoyable. So this event provides participants with a fun means of the learning about disaster prevention through playing with families and friends. So I'd like to show some of specific lessons of these activities. So this slide shows the jack up training. People can learn how to use a jack up, assuming that rescuing people. And this slide shows the training about the making open clean films over the plate. In the event of disaster, it is assumed that the water will be cut off. So this is one of the useful way for considering in case of disasters. So it is kind of the paper crafting for making emergency tools. Okay, so this is a last slide. So actually, so it is one of the areas is promotion as the community-based hazard mapping in the local communities. Now I would like to show the very short video about the town watching program. So this program is aims to make a community-based hazard map. So by using only large paper and pencils. So you don't need to prepare the computer and projector, something like that. So it is conducted by a very low cost. You don't need to prepare the much money. So first activity is to visit our own town like this. And the second activity is they are making their own hazard mapping. So where is a dangerous place or a safety place against a disaster. After that, they will discuss. As I mentioned that if during this program, so you don't need to prepare the much money. So easy way to transfer to the other Asian countries. So if you have interest in about these activities, please contact us by email, something like that. Okay, that is my explanation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ikeda. Before inviting our last speaker, I would like to say that there are lots of unanswered Q&A questions in our Q&A box. So if speakers, please go ahead and answer to the questions that you are willing to answer or have those questions that have been asked to you. And now I would like to invite our last, but not least, our speaker, Ms. Daria Moknachepa from UNDRR. She is the Program Management Officer in UNDRR, and she will present on the topic of capacity development tools for earthquake risk management. Ms. Moknachepa, the floor is yours. You have 12 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kim. So greetings to everybody from Incheon. I'm Daria Moknachepa for UNDR, ONE and Getty. I think looking at the Q&A and the chat box, we have received so many different questions about how to predict earthquakes, about early warning systems. And some of the speakers have already addressed it in a very clear way that unfortunately we cannot predict earthquakes, but we can predict the impacts. And what we can also do is to try to better understand the risks and better prepare for them. So in this presentation, I would like to present a few tools and useful resources from UNDRR and also from other partners working with us globally which can help governments to assess some disaster resilience gaps and support earthquake risk management. So UNDRR is the lead UN agency. Apologies, there you go. UNDRR is the lead United Nations agency for disaster risk reduction and for the support to the implementation of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015-2030. And ONEA and GETI was established in 2010 with the support of the Ministry of Interior and Safety of Korea and Incheon City to promote capacity development for disaster risk reduction globally, and also to support activities in Northeast Asia. So as part of our work with cities to strengthen local level resilience, in particular through the Making Cities Resilient 2030 initiative, UNDRR and its partners have developed a set of tools to help cities assess their level of resilience and also identify some gaps in order to inform urban resilience and disaster risk reduction planning. So to develop what we call resilience plans. One of the key tools is the Disaster Resilience Scorecard for Cities, which comes in two versions, the preliminary and the detailed. And these tools offer a set of indicators for cities across key areas of urban planning and governance. There is also a scorecard for industrial and commercial buildings developed by the ARISE private sector network. These scorecards can be used by governments and other stakeholders as well to identify gaps and to support disaster risk reduction planning, including in relation to earthquake risk. So in addition to the main disaster resilience scorecard, there is a number of thematic annexes which help to explore certain specific issues in more depth. For example, public health or food systems, cultural heritage, or inclusion of people with disability. And there are also some new thematic tools that are being developed to cover climate resilience, gender, and early warning. So all these tools offer some indicators that can be useful to consider when assessing the resilience of a city or a certain area or a specific sector. And this includes the context of earthquake risk. So I would like to share today a few examples of indicators of relevance to earthquake risk planning and also earthquake risk gap assessment. So these are examples from the detailed scorecard for cities. And the scorecard is structured along the so-called 10 essentials for making cities resilient, which is in a way a checklist to help governments unpack the Sendai framework and what it means to implement this framework at the local level. So in a way, these essentials correspond to some guiding principles to support disaster risk reduction action. And they cover such aspects as governance, risk data, finance, urban design, societal capacity, as well as preparedness and recovery. So for each essential, in the scorecard, there are specific indicators that help to assess how resilient a city is. And many of these indicators can be used to help identify possible gaps in the city's resilience, specifically in relation to earthquake risk. And as you see here on the screen, each indicator is accompanied by a commentary with some guidance on measures that can help to improve resilience. I'm not going to go in much detail for these indicators, but just to give you an example here, this is an indicator that can help to assess if earthquake risk is adequately understood and integrated in the city's estimates and risk assessments. Some other indicators can be used to assess whether building codes are up to date and whether they integrate the latest and most advanced earthquake resilience standards. We also have examples of indicators that can be used to assess the resilience of critical infrastructure and check, for example, if protective infrastructure for earthquakes is in place, whether it's updated, regularly maintained, improved. And another indicator is to help to assess the status of early warning systems. So in the case of earthquakes, as mentioned, the early warning systems are still limited or under development. But responsible entities can make sure that the latest emergency communication and information measures are in place to inform the population of the necessary emergency steps. Here is another example of an indicator that can help to assess if there are clear plans and assigned responsibilities for post-earthquake resilience, post-earthquake recovery. And I would also like to share some examples from the scorecard for industrial and commercial buildings. So this was developed by our partners from the ARISE network for the private sector. And this tool includes more specific indicators for earthquake risk. So for example, the indicator here on the screen helps to identify the levels of earthquake-related risk to which buildings are exposed. And this indicator looks into building codes compliance, and it can be used in relation to earthquake risk specifically as well. There are also indicators about the building design and infrastructure with some guidance on the side of how the design can be improved. And this is also a very concrete indicator on available emergency equipment in buildings. And you can see in the comments section a list that can be helpful for building managers or local governments to know how to prepare buildings for disasters. So this specific scorecard can be applied for any type of building, whether commercial, multi-residential, industrial, office buildings, and it can be used by owners, by relevant public entities, or by private actors. And one final example from the cultural heritage addendum, which has indicators that are specific to cultural heritage and traditional design. And this can help to assess how resilient or vulnerable traditional structures are. So this can also be applied against earthquake-related risks. All these were just a few examples of the indicators that can be helpful to consider in order to identify how prepared a city or an area is in relation to earthquake risk. So they can be used selectively and adapted, adjusted to the local context and needs. And these scorecards are meant to be implemented as part of a consultative and multi-stakeholder process organized by the city government. And it can take any time between a few days or a few weeks or months, depending on how much in depth the city would like to go into this assessment and how many resources can be allocated to this process. And then the results of this process can help to develop a full action plan or resilience program and generate dialogue and collaboration across sectors. And finally, I would like to share some additional resources that are available on the UNDR knowledge platform called Prevention Web. And these, I would like to focus on some resources that are specifically related to earthquake risk. So Prevention Web is a global knowledge sharing platform that brings together all the latest research, guidance, policies, lessons learned, and also examples from other countries and cities. And I would like to show you just a few functions. So let me go to the website directly, just a second. Okay. So here what I would like to focus on is, this is the Prevention Web website. When you access it, you see the knowledge base tab that you can click. And you will get to the page with the latest additions. So this is the repository really of all existing research, studies, publications about disaster risk reduction. And you can search these publications by theme or by hazards, by continents and countries. You can also look at the latest editions. So just to show a few examples, if you click on the hazard tab, you can find here different types of hazards. So you can click on earthquake. And once you get there, you can search the publications by content type or themes or hazards again. You can also expand. There are a few more filters by organization type, country, year. So let us, for example, look for capacity development related publications. And so here you get to a page which includes some resources that can help capacity development related to earthquake risk. So this is based on some lessons learned from other countries, but also some methodological guidance for governments in different languages. Also some courses, for example, here there's a training module on urban risk reduction and resilience, and there are many pages and resources that you can continue with. Then if you look in the latest editions tab, you can also choose different types of content. So I would like to show a couple of examples, starting with research briefs, which will give you the latest guidance, research on earthquake. So you can also filter the results by theme or country or type of hazard. So here I would like to show you earthquake-related research. So there you go. Once you click apply, you will see all different studies from around the world on the impacts of earthquakes, on earthquake risk assessment, and all the latest research from academia and specialized institutions. There is also a very interesting tab called Learning from Past Disasters. And these are all the lessons learned from different past earthquakes as well. So you can search by type of hazard. So here I will apply earthquake again. And apologies, my connection is a little bit slow. So let me just, okay. So I hope you can see this page. So here we have some examples from the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami. We have some examples also from the Turkey-Syria earthquake in February this year. So when we click on that, we get to a page which basically provides some additional resources about the earthquake. And I just wanted to show this example, which is one of the resources available under the Turkey and Syria earthquake page, where a study has been conducted on the buildings that were left standing in the country, which can offer some guidance on the design which can be resilient to earthquakes. So this is an article which provides useful links on different types of earthquake resilient infrastructure. And one final example, I would like to show you also the policy and plans tab. So here you can search policies and plans from different countries. And if you type in earthquake here in the search bar, you will find examples of policies and plans from different countries and sometimes from cities that were specifically designed to prepare these countries and cities to earthquake-related risk. For example, here the Philippines has a national disaster response plan for earthquake and tsunami, and you can download the file very easily from this page. So there are many resources, and I really encourage you to explore them. And we also invite all the governments to share the different examples of best practices and policies and research that they have, and to use this prevention web platform for that purpose. So with that, I would like to finish, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Daria, for your very insightful presentation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will begin the closing session for our workshop today. So first, please welcome Mr. Sanjaya Bhatia, the head of UNDR ONEA Getty, for closing remarks. Mr. Bhatia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me firstly say that this intervention today, this webinar has been very timely. As many of you will know, there has been a midterm review of the Sendai framework, which is looking at progress achieved so far in the implementation of the Sendai framework. So during this midterm review, a large number of member states, and in fact, all the member states and other stakeholders were present in New York, where they looked at what is happening with the implementation and what are the continuing gaps, and are we on track to achieve the Sendai framework. So what has come out of that midterm review, and there is a report on that which is available online also, is that there are many gaps. We are much behind what we wanted to achieve. And at the current pace, we will find it very difficult to achieve all the targets of Sendai framework. And this, of course, has a bearing on the achievement of the Paris Agreement and the Agenda 2030 also. So the SDGs are also being pushed back. We are not on track to achieve them. To ensure that we can catch up and fill these gaps, one of the issues mentioned was capacity building of governments and stakeholders, and also building up the skills and access to resources that they need to tackle these issues. So today's webinar addresses that. It is a part of the capacity building effort. It also has tried to share the best practices in the Northeast Asia region with participants from around the world. I saw more than 420 participants in this webinar, and also to give a chance not only to share the experiences, but also do the Q&A. Many questions were asked, many questions were answered by these global experts. So it is very important because earthquake risk, as you know, is very strong in this region, but also globally. And earthquakes, of course, are very damaging and they create all these losses, but they also increase the vulnerability of people. And as you know, with increasing climate change, the climate induced phenomena are also increasing in frequency and intensity. So the earthquakes can increase the vulnerability, and then the climate change will further push people back into underdevelopment and taking us away from achieving the SDGs. So this webinar is very timely. I wanted to thank the institutions of the China, Japan, and Korea, the Ministry of Emergency Management from China, the Cabinet Office from Japan, and the Ministry of the Interior and Safety from Korea. I also like to take this opportunity to thank Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat. They have been a long-standing partner with us in trying to showcase the best practices and the experiences from this region to other countries and other stakeholders around the world. So again, thank you all. And of course, I'd like to thank all the participants for their active engagement. I also, I think some of you may know, we are going to organize the forum, the annual forum of the Northeast Asia on 18th and 19th September in Incheon. I would welcome all of you to attend, and that will be a very interesting experience of practice, good practice sharing, of course, with a global audience. So with this, again, a lot of thanks for a very timely webinar, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Mr. Bhatia, thank you for your remarks. Next, TCS Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Beck, will give closing remark. Mr. Beck, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatia, distinguished experts and guests. I hope today's forum will be an outstanding milestone for exchanges of best practices, technologies, and the capacity development tools of CJK and Mongolia, and also UNDRR. CJK and Mongolia will have to deal with natural disasters, including earthquake, in hand to prevent the people of CJK and Mongolia from further unpredictable damages. I would like to thank you all for your contributions to this successful workshop. TCS will closely cooperate with CJK and Mongolian governments, and also UNDRR, on sharing experiences and practices. I'm certain that our close cooperation will serve us to reduce earthquake risk. Let us convince to work together towards a safe world. See you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, DSG Beck. Distinguished guests and all the speakers, this closes today's workshop. We sincerely appreciate your attendance today, and the video recordings of this whole sessions, as well as the presentations, will be made available on the UNDRR website in the coming days. We look forward for your continuous support and hope to see you again soon. Thank you.